Okay, it is 6 o'clock and we value your time. So we're starting right on the dot, and hopefully some others will join us as we dive into our very exciting volunteer adventure Q&A workshop webinar. This is our first ever time doing this, so we're really excited to offer this year and be able to have our whole program team here. So we'll jump into this and so our agenda for tonight will be to first introduce ourselves to you all, and then after that we'll do a quick run through show of what the registration process will look like with us this upcoming season. If you volunteered with us before, not much has changed, so you're probably going to be pretty well seasoned in that. Next, we'll go through some of those very frequently asked questions as a team, and after that we'll open it up to you all. However, if additional questions come up at any point, feel free to use the Q&A button that should be located to the right or to the bottom of your Zoom page, or you can just raise your hand, and during the open question portion I'll unmute you and have you ask us your question live. So thanks, everyone. I know it's kind of rough at 6 o'clock to power through this, so we're really thankful that you're all here, and we're really excited for the 2023 season this year. It's going to be a good one, and there's some new faces here today too that we'll introduce in just a second, so soon they'll be regular faces. So if this is your first time joining us, we're the Bob Marshall Wilderness Foundation. We've been around for about 26 years now, and we're really excited to be starting our 26th season. We work in close partnership with the U.S. Forest Service to create educational and challenging conservation service projects within the Bob. This is our first, since our first summer in 1997, our volunteer crews have cleared and improved over 5,000 miles of trail. So we're hoping you're gonna help us get to that 6,000 number mark this summer. This is some of our mission and vision statements, and we work really hard to try to connect all people to their public lands. And so that's part of what we do, as well as keeping our trails open, restoring natural native habitat, mitigating user impacts, and engaging youth, adults, and in wilderness experiences that change lives to instill lasting land and ethic. So this is our team. Unfortunately, it's not a whole photo of our team because Ian had not joined us at that point. So luckily he's here, so you can see him and imagine him there with one of our mules. I'm Erin. I'm the Education and Partnership Specialist. I work with most of our partner groups that do trips with us, and I'll pass it over to Rebecca.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Powell, the program director. And yeah, I've been with the foundation for maybe like 13 years now. So this is our most packed season yet. So I'm excited to get it working.
And next, I'll pass it over to Ian.
Hi, everyone. My name's Ian Bartling. I'm the field coordinator, so I get to oversee a lot of the logistics for our summer programming, meaning planning the logistics of all of our trips, getting our crew leaders trained up. I did 2 seasons as a crew leader with the foundation, 2019, 2020, and have been in this role since December of this year, and I'm really excited for this upcoming season and seeing some of y'all out in the Bob.
And last but not least, we have Zach.
Hey everybody, I'm Zach Schlanger. I'm the invasive species coordinator. I started with the foundation kind of around this time last year, and since then we've had some funding to grow that program, and so I'm just kind of trying to develop it the best I can, and I'll be leading a few of our weeds trips this summer and training our weeds crew lead, and do a lot of coordinating with the Forest Service and other partners, and working with Erin on education stuff.
And so that's us, and you can reach out to, we'll have contact information towards the end of this webinar. So if you have very specific questions that would either go to invasive species or field coordination, you can reach out to either Ian, Zach, myself, or Rebecca. So we will jump into what it looks like to register for a trip. And bear with me as I now switch over to what that looks like. Okay, and everyone can see our volunteer adventure page, correct? Awesome. So the way that you find this page is first you arrive to our Bob Marshall Wilderness Foundation homepage, which looks like this. Go to the volunteer tab, find volunteer adventures, and toggle down till you find our 2023 trips. As you can see, they are available for preview, so you would select that button. Following that, you would then scroll down and begin to explore which trips work best for your summer schedule and your ability as well. As you can see, we have the dates, locations, and the difficulty level here. As you begin selecting which trip looks like it would be the best for your ability, for an area of the Bob you would like to check out, and something that is fitting to your schedule, you would then select the Learn More section, and from there, explore that a little bit more in depth. And if it does sound like it's the trip for you, you will then find the sign up button. And I do encourage you to read very thoroughly through the page. There's a ton of information there that will be really useful as you begin setting up your trip. And now we will go to application. The actual application itself. Again, if you volunteered with us before, there are a few changes, however, not a ton, so you should be all set. Here's the project registration page. So once you select that sign up page, you will be led to this page afterwards. However, because we're in preview week, that will not happen until Friday, because that is when our trips go live. So once Friday hits, and again, you have your top trip selected, this is how you would register. The information that kind of confirms that it's the trip you do want to register for will be located right here. We do have a refundable deposit that we request because we put a lot of time and effort into planning these trips, and we just want to make sure you show up to the trailhead. There is a student discount code, and something that is not included here, but something that is brand new to the foundation is if you are a registered tribal member, we will also be waiving any registration deposits as well. So a lot of this is pretty standard. You know, you got your first name, Aaron Castellanos. If you'd like to, you know, reach out to me, you can find me at aaron@bmwf.org. And you can contact me at all my pre-listed items. And before we get there, so as you can see, a lot of these things are pretty standard. The coupon is where your waived fee code would be located. So you can go ahead and select that. And secondly, we do recommend you also read through the JHA's, the job hazard analysis forms, which based on our insurance policy with the Forest Service, is required that you do read, as well as the acknowledgement of risk. And with any outdoor activity, there is an acknowledgement of risk, as well as some sort of, we try to maintain as much as we can. And Rebecca will speak a bit more about what we do for preventative safety measures as well. And yeah. So let me just, Missoula, Montana. And I'm based out of Missoula, even though the majority of our staff is so another thing to note is as our trips start filling up, you will see how many spots there are left on our trips. Because of wilderness numbers or Bob Marshall wilderness numbers, we try to keep our group size numbers for volunteers to be at 8. So our trips do fill up relatively fast, and we do encourage you to either sign up knowing that you will be able to attend, or just be aware of how many persons are left with this number. You can also register up to 4 individuals, which is why this number is important, because if you wanted to register 4 and there are only 3 seats available, the 4th person would then be placed on a wait list. So for example, here I am registering myself for the trip. I will go ahead and answer those questions because it's very important if I'm allergic to something for my crew lead to know, as well as some medical conditions. And following that, once I kind of go over these general questions, I will then either add an attendee or leave it at just myself, depending on whether or not I am adding another person. And again, and they're the same standard questions. We ask that every attendee, however, does review that JHA portion, as well as the MWF acknowledgement portion, because we want to make sure everyone is looking at that. Even if you are registering somebody else, we ask that the person that is going on the trip reviews it. And so there would be attendee 3. And if there are no more seats available, or no more spots left on that trip, you will see a notice that looks like this. And we do highly encourage you to still add yourself to the wait list, because more often than not, we do pull from the wait list because things happen. We're hoping that, everyone is able to attend the trip, but there's a strong likelihood that if you're placed on a wait list, you might be able to join us after all. So, and yeah, that's pretty standard for our registration. And I'm happy to take any questions if there are any on the registration portion of it. Did you have something to add, Ian? You're welcome to chime in.
Yeah, I just want to jump in. I want to make one quick clarification. Aaron had said registration opens on Friday. It'll be opening on Monday, actually, so a week from today. And I will be at the REI in Kalispell doing some kind of information sharing about those trips, so that folks have a few more days to preview them before registration goes live. So just a simple clarification.
And I'm seeing we're getting some questions that I'm going to defer to Ian and Rebecca for. Andrew is asking what time registration will open on Monday.
We're gonna have registration opening at about 8 a.m. Monday is when we set the timers to allow you to register.
And to answer Peter's question about age restrictions for kids, we do have parameters around that, and we'll get into that with our FAQs. Okay, so now we will go into those FAQs unless there are any other questions specific to registration. Okay, then we will transition into our FAQs. Oh. Okay, so, and then once you are registered, oh wait, there we go. And once you are registered, you just stay tuned for emails as well as following us on social media, because we will be posting some updates as we get started into the season, and you can kind of see how things are shaping up. So just stay glued to BMWF, make sure we're not in your spam folder, and you can check to see how your trip's shaping up. And now we will kick it off with, what does a typical day look like on one of our volunteer trips? And that is for Ian.
Yeah, I will speak to that. Something that Aaron mentioned was those JHAs, that job hazard analysis. And so when you sign that job hazard analysis, which is a requirement to do our trips, you essentially become a Forest Service volunteer. So what that means then is that you are expected to work a certain amount of hours as a Forest Service volunteer. That JHA, by signing that, you are also covered under workers' compensation through the Forest Service. In the event that you are injured, we take every precaution we can to mitigate those risks. But so some of those expectations that the Forest Service has of us and our volunteers, we work an 8-hour day. So although that schedule says coffee's on at 7 a.m., folks wake up, they eat breakfast, they pack their lunch, they kind of get warmed up for the day. Our working day begins at 8 a.m. Sharp. And so that is when you are hiking out, leaving your camp, and on your way to your work site for the day. So the hike to the work site is a part of that working day. We work until about 10 a.m. where we take about a 15-minute snack break. That's when the there's a daily fire weather forecast that happens later in the summer. Our crew leaders like to listen to that, so they have a sense of what weather's coming. Volunteers enjoy hearing that as well. So from 10 to 10:15, just a short snack break, working until about noon, where you'll take a half-hour lunch break, and then continuing to work, and then begin hiking back to your camp so that you arrive back around 4:30. And so that kind of fills out a full day of work. Upon arriving back at camp, your crew leader will be putting out some appetizers to tide you over until dinner, and then they'll begin preparing dinner. And so volunteers are expected to assist with some of those chores. There's plenty of camp chores like getting water in the filter, collecting firewood, helping with meal prep and cleanup. And our crew leaders will kind of ask for help as needed, but it's awesome for volunteers to jump into some of those tasks as well to ensure that our crew leads have the help they need, and that this communal trip goes off smoothly. But when dinner's over, when things are cleaned up, the evenings are pretty relaxed. Folks can go read, play games, go fishing, get horizontal in your tent and rest for the next day of work. But those evening times are not structured so that folks have some time to just recuperate and be ready for the next day.
Great. So I'm wondering, I'm going to pause after every FAQ to see if there are any follow-up questions to the initial question. But if not, we will move to the next one. And if we go past it, I will always make sure to be checking up on those. So next
Aaron,
we have...
I can do one little bit of follow-up. I failed to talk about just the work itself. The work varies from trip to trip, whether you're pulling weeds, using saws to clear trees, or picks or shovels to dig tread. So, the work schedule will be the same as far as the hours for each trip, but I would count on volunteers to read the descriptions closely to see the finer details of what the work will entail. So yeah, sorry to cut in there, Aaron. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. And I will try to make this full screen. Let me know if that's any better for you. And does it look better for you all? Okay. So next we'll go into what kind of safety protocols does the foundation have for trips? And that's directed for Rebecca.
Yeah, we're taking folks out into the backcountry for many days at a time, and often doing things they've never done before, using primitive tools like saws and hanging around mules and horses. And so there's a lot of danger involved, or there could be. So we as a foundation take safety like top priority. All of our crew leaders are required to have at least a wilderness first aid certification. And we do a lot of training on that during orientation. Our orientation is about 4 weeks long. And then we also do a lot of training on just basic safety, tool use, ergonomics, that kind of stuff. All of our crew leaders carry a Forest Service radio and a InReach device. And so there's 2 ways in which they can reach out in case of an emergency. Most of the districts that we work on require us to check in at least once a day, sometimes twice a day. And so the safety protocol there is all of our crew leaders, usually at the beginning of the day, do a morning check-in with the Forest Service saying that they're going to work on a certain trail that day so they know where we're at and what we're doing. And then they check out that evening, say that they're back at camp. And if any of those check-ins get missed, there are certain protocols that go into place for that. But yeah, safety isn't just hard hats and eyewear and gloves. It's also water filters. That's a big thing. Sanitary camp conditions, making sure everybody's hydrated and feeling good and ready for the work day. And each morning we'll do a little safety talk. There's one main big safety talk that happens at the trailhead before everybody goes in. And then each day there's another little quick safety talk that happens to just talk about what might happen that day. Maybe yesterday on the fire weather forecast, you heard that there might be a storm coming in the afternoon. So you might revisit that and talk about what protocols we might take for that. Maybe you'll work not on a ridge that day and you'll work down lower in the valley that day and change for those kind of situations. So we've been very lucky in that we have led very safe trips in the past. There's always blisters and sore muscles and that kind of stuff, but yeah, we've take safety very seriously and have a pretty high standard for our crew leaders and our packers and our volunteers that are out there.
Okay, thanks. So what fitness level should I have to safely participate on a BMWF trip? And this one is for Ian.
Awesome. So Aaron showed us all earlier that long master list of trips on our website, and each one of them has these graphics that you see in front of you that kind of indicate the strenuousness of both the hike into your base camp and the strenuousness of the work for the day. So it's really important as you're deciding what trip to sign up for that you look closely at those. There is a very simple description written for each trip about both the hiking and the work strenuousness. So it's a very brief description, but it talks about how many miles you can expect to hike to your work site every day, how many miles it is to your base camp, maybe how much elevation gain or loss you could expect over the course of the day. So please take those things into consideration as you're choosing what trips work best for you. We offer trips that have all the vary in their strenuousness level as far as hiking to the trailhead goes, or hiking to your work site or your base camp. Some are based at a trailhead. Others you might be hiking 2 days over multiple mountain passes and 30 miles total over those 2 days to your work site. So that would be the most strenuous end, and then trailhead base would be the easiest end. As far as workload goes, the easier trips will entail maybe simple weed pulling, some simple brushing work, whereas the most strenuous trips might entail heavy saw work, lots of time sawing trees with a crosscut saw and moving those trees off the trail. So a lot of heavy lifting. Those strenuous levels also take into account like I said, the hiking distance to and from the work site. So a strenuous trip, you might be expected to do 10 plus miles round trip daily to your work site. So maybe 5 miles up a trail to where you left the work site the day prior, and then you'll have to do that 5 or 6 miles back at the end of the day. Please take those difficulty levels into consideration. And if you need any clarification from us, we're happy to answer those questions and can give you more specifics about those trips if there's any uncertainty about if you're physically able to do them. We never want to turn people away who are interested in serving and volunteering with us, but we are a partner of the Forest Service, so we take the strenuousness of our trips seriously because we want to accomplish these projects. So just please be mindful of that.
And if anyone has any questions on how to rate these, they are all available on our website as well, so you can read them a bit more into detail. And they're located on that volunteer adventure page that we explored earlier. Okay, so how can I get in shape for a trip? And this question is for Rebecca.
These are great graphics, Erin. Just to add a little bit to what Ian mentioned about strenuous level, you know, in all the years I've been getting volunteers into the woods, it's often that volunteers underestimate their abilities rather than overestimate them. So, you know, we have the average age of our volunteer is about 65 years old, and we get about half female, half male. And they're people who like to hike, like to be physically active and do stuff outdoors, and yeah, sign up for the right level. I would say, you know, some advice is like, right, the only person who's going to be in shape to do trail work all the time is the crew leader, because we don't expect volunteers to be in trail shape of like, you know, sawing logs all day for 3 months straight. So use that as your best judgment. You know, if you're fit and you're active and you're somebody who moves a lot, then you should be okay for the trip. If you have a hard time hiking uphill for long periods of time in the heat, maybe find one that doesn't have a mountain pass that you're going over. Some of the trips have longer hikes in, but the work is closer to camp, so you're not commuting as far each day. And some of the trips have long hikes in or short hikes in, but you're doing a lot of hiking each day for work. So check out those descriptions for that. How can I get in shape for a trip? I think all of us have been out doing something that we're not physically able to do in the best shape for, and it's not as fun. So the more fit you are, the more fun you're going to have out there in the backcountry, sleeping on the ground, crawling out of your tent at night to use the bathroom. All those kind of little things add up if you're not ready for the trip. So there's a lot of great online you know, fitness kind of things you can do, some free ones. There's a new company called Mountain Tough that's offering all of our volunteers, I think it's like 30 or 40% off their programs for an online program of like fitness and that kind of stuff. But, you know, just the recommendation is that you're able to hike or walk at least 2 miles an hour, carrying about a 30-pound pack. Because of the pack support that we get on a lot of those trips, you might not need to carry that much weight in, but you should be prepared to. And yeah, so if you're choosing a really strenuous trip, like you're going into Big Prairie and it's 2 days long hike with 16 miles each day and you're going over a pass, then you're going to want to be able to hike more than 2 miles an hour with a 40-pound pack. You're going to want to step that up and have a bigger level. So yeah, getting in shape for going in the backcountry is a lot of strength training, a lot of core training, and yeah, and also, you know, eating healthy. We do try to feed all of our volunteers very healthy, but starting off with having a good diet, and then hydrating, keeping hydrated before your trip. As we say, tomorrow's hydration starts today, so keep that in mind, and you should be good to go. And like Ian mentioned, if there's ever any questions that you might have about if you think you're physically able to do the trip, give us a call and chat with us about it, because we know these trips pretty good and we like to chat to people. So don't be afraid to reach out.
And that also goes for getting your gear in shape as well. So while you're doing some warm-ups, it'd be great to have you also potentially strap on that backpack, see to make sure it feels all good. And same with boots. We want to make sure your boots are worn in and in shape for the trip as well.
Yeah, thank you for that. And also, you know, some things about packing are, some people have, you know, we try to encourage everybody to limit the gadgets they bring into the backcountry. We are in the wilderness and we like to keep things simple, but you know, a lot of people have their phones that they take photos with and stuff. So if you have a little solar charger, that kind of stuff, make sure that's working ahead of time. Leave your iPad at home. You're not watching movies in the tent, that kind of thing. But yeah, test out all your gear ahead of time so you know what works and what doesn't work.
So what if I don't have backcountry experience? And this question is for Zach.
Yeah, so you know, our mission is to get people out there, right? And if you have no experience at all, we're totally prepared with that. You really only need to be motivated to do the trip and, you know, choose a trip that you are in shape for and prepared for physically. But yeah, we're totally prepared for newcomers. As far as going on, you know, a more strenuous, difficult trip, I think, you know, we've talked about it, that you should have a little bit of experience, like wearing the pack that you're going to be carrying with you, those boots broken in, sort of get some training, but you don't have to have gone backpacking before to go on one of our bigger trips by any stretch. These are a great way to sort of get more comfortable in the backcountry and sort of living out of a backpack, living in a tent. So really appropriate for anybody if you've got the will and the, you know, the toughness to go along. As far as the gear, if you don't have to have a completely stocked, you know, backpacking setup to go on a trip with us. We have a gear library where we've got tents, sleeping bags, sleeping pads, backpacks if you need them. We just ask that you get in touch with us, you know, about 3 weeks or longer before your trip, so that we can set that aside, right? And we'll sort of ask you, you know, how tall you are to figure out what sort of equipment you need. But we can help take care of you with that if you need it. You know, we can't loan you boots and shorts and stuff like that, but as far as some of those items like a backpack and sleeping bag, we got you covered. And then we also, if you want to go on a trip that is focused more on some of those, you know, wilderness living skills, we have a Wilderness 101 group for adults, and you can apply on our website to learn a little bit more about that. Yeah, that's what I got. Any questions?
We did get a question in regards to going back to the boots and the gear.
Yeah, I see that now, yeah.
So I saw the recommendation of boots versus no tennis shoes. I have not worn boots hiking since the 90s, in preference for trail runners. So
Totally.
Rebecca, Zach, feel free to chime in, but we do recommend boots for working, because we're using some pretty heavy tools. If you want to, you know, walk in or hike in with your trail runners, you know, a lot of our crew leads or one of our crew leads last year, for example, really enjoyed them. And that's what worked for her. But when she was working, she made sure to have some boots because they would protect her toes in case a log came her way. A tennis shoe won't really do a ton. But Rebecca, Zach, do you have anything to add?
Well, yeah, I'll just say, I mean, you know, if I'm doing a 15-mile day, yeah, I don't wear my leather work boots. But, you know, keep in mind that depending on how much room the packer has, they might not be able to carry your footwear in addition to everything else. So, you know, if you are going to hike in the boots that you're or in runners, right? Just be prepared to carry your work boots if you have to, would be what I'd say.
And just to add to that too, yeah, everything, I agree with all that. Hiking in and runners for sure. Like I'm not a big fan of hiking in the boots myself either. But you are crossing a ton of creeks in the Bob. And so having like river crossing shoes handy, Chacos, Tivas, bedrock sandals, those kind of things that have ankles, you know, like an ankle strap, but not Crocs. Crocs can float off. We've found many one Crocs in creeks around, around the Bob of people that have lost one Croc or one flip flop. So have some river crossing shoes handy that you can keep accessible as you're hiking in. And then, you know, I oftentimes, if I'm going to be crossing a lot of little creeks, I'll wear my hiking boots because they're more waterproof, and just some gaiters. And then I don't have to change in and out of my shoes to my sandals for each creek. I can just walk through that creek with my Gore-Tex boots on, and then and not have to change, especially in the spring when the water's cold. But yeah, so definitely, you know, we do require that when you're doing work, you're wearing supportive footwear with ankle support. And like Aaron said, there's logs that roll, there's axes that fall in the wrong places, there's things that happen, and that's just part of our safety and part of the actual requirement of the Forest Service. As a Forest Service volunteer, that's a requirement that you have adequate footwear.
Great, thanks. So next we're going to move on to what do you do about bear safety? And this question is for Ian.
Yeah, so we're lucky to get to work in grizzly bear country. It's awesome that we work in an ecosystem that has such a robust population of both grizzly bears and black bears. And so, but that does mean we have to take certain precautions, and our crew leaders are trained in these precautions. First and foremost, the biggest thing is just a lot of food storage, best practices that we use in the backcountry. So for the most part, that'll be storing your food in bear safe containers. We have a lot of bear safe bear boxes, and additionally bear safe coolers that we will keep our food stored in. So if people are attending to that food or in camp, that food doesn't have to be stored or put away at all times. But for the workday or at night, that will be locked up and it will be stored in a bear-proof manner. Additionally, all of our crew leaders carry a bear spray. Any of y'all who hike in Northwest Montana already likely have cans of bear spray of your own. We would encourage everyone to bring their own can of bear spray if they have it. But our crew leaders will all have their own as well. But definitely advised to carry your own. One note regarding firearms: a lot of folks do like to have firearms as a bear deterrent. That is not allowed on BNWF trips. And that is all, not only is that a foundation policy, but it's a policy of the U.S. Forest Service, since you are a U.S. Forest Service volunteer. Our volunteer packers, that's the one exception. So if there's anybody on this webinar who is a packer, they are allowed to carry a firearm. And that is strictly for, you know, if an animal, if a mule or a horse is injured, to be able to humanely put them down. And that is the only reason that those packers are given that exception to carry a firearm. So, but we don't really have a lot of negative encounters with bears. We operate in large enough groups that often those bears are well aware of us before we are ever aware of them. And so for better or worse, chances are you won't see a bear on your trip. Although they are awesome to see when you have the opportunity to do so.
Great, thanks. So what about invasive species? And this question is for Zach.
Yeah, so you know, when you actually get out into the wilderness, it's pretty incredible back there, just the difference between what we live in, you know, urban or rural areas, where there are a lot of invasive species around us on a daily basis, as opposed to the backcountry, which is more or less in a, I don't want to say pristine, but in a really good condition because it hasn't been modified by people. And you can help us keep it that way by cleaning your gear before you leave the trailhead. We're going to have that be something that we are doing on all our trips this year, just brushing off boots, sort of going over our backpacks and just making sure there aren't seeds sticking to things. If you're, whether you're in Montana or you're coming from out of state, we just ask that, try and clean your gear before you jump in the car and head to the trailhead or before you go to the airport. Just to keep the backcountry in that sort of more pristine condition. And this also extends to to what you put in the water, right? So if you have felt-soled wading boots that you are going to bring on the trip, or maybe even if in general, if you use felt-soled wading boots, really thoroughly clean them with a chemical cleaner, right, in a high concentration, or just don't wear felt-soled boots because they can carry parasites, all kinds of things, microbes that aren't native to those high mountain waterways. That said, felt-soled boots are still legal in Montana, so you're in the clear technically. But yeah, just brush or hose off your shoes and boots, shake out your tent, shake off your backpack, give it a good brush off. As far as coming on our weeds projects, we don't have our volunteers spraying herbicide. All our weeds projects are manually removing weeds. So that's using hand tools to pull weeds up by the roots. Sometimes I'll be clipping the flowering tops off weeds, and all that stuff is going to go into garbage bags so that we're getting all those seeds and parts out of the backcountry. I would suggest, if you're going to be on one of our weeds trips, long pants and long sleeves are pretty nice, so you're not getting all scratched up. Handling those scratchy dry plants all day can be kind of irritating to your skin. And otherwise, we'll provide protective equipment like gloves and eyewear for our trips if you need it. But also, if you have nice work gloves that you want to bring for a trip like that, or eyewear, and this goes for any of our trips, feel free to bring that along. Any questions?
Just a reminder to our volunteer packers, if there are any on here, to use certified Weed See free feed 3 days prior to going on any Forest Service land to, again, keep weeds out of the backcountry. And so what is our cancellation policy? Oh wait, really quick before we dive into that. Oh, sorry, I thought we had a question. Rebecca, what is our cancellation policy?
Yeah, this year we have over 50 projects that we're doing on the complex, and that takes organization of crew leaders to get them trained and get them to the trailhead, all of our office staff to handle registrations and getting Forest Service agreements signed, all of our packers who spend the time driving to the trailhead, the crew leaders who are meal planning and going shopping for all the stuff. So there's a lot of work that goes into pulling off a project. And we hope that anybody who signs up the project takes it as seriously as we are. If you sign up for the project, you've already have it on your summer schedule and you're ready to go. You've already made sure that you don't have any family reunions or weddings or whatever else during that time, and that you're committed to going and doing the project. Of course, life happens and things kind of happen, and you might need to cancel out of the project. If you cancel out 45 days prior to your trip, you can get your refund back or your deposit back, your $75 deposit back. If you cancel within the 45 days of the project start date, you will not receive your $75 refund. Once people cancel, we try and get the first person on the wait list to sign up, see if they're able to go. The closer you cancel to the project, if you're a week out from the project or something like that and you cancel, it's really hard to fill your spot. So The minute you know if you're not able to go, we ask that you let us know, and so that we can start moving forward on filling your spot. There's a lot of people that want to go on these trips, and we value everybody's time and want to make the most out of the trips. So yeah, cancellation policy, we take it seriously.
And here are some testimonials from some 2022 volunteers that had a wonderful time with us this past summer. And hopefully you all will give us some of your testimonials, because you'll also have a wonderful time with us this summer. And with that, we are opening it up to questions for the next 10 minutes.
Yeah, we forgot to mention the age limitations.
Yes.
And that is 12 and older with chaperone supervision, and then 16 with legal guardian permission. Those are our lower limit age limitations.
Thanks for bringing us back to that. Yeah. So we have a question here. So for each project, I read about miles and elevation gain from the trailhead to base camp. I don't recall any reference to daily commute miles. Please expand. So I can send this one to either Ian or Rebecca, whichever you two would like to answer that one.
Yeah, I'm not sure, Erin, since you're sharing your screen, if you can pull up a volunteer trip details for this year, but there is a couple spots where we add that kind of stuff on the volunteer registration. You know, there's the strenuous level, but then in the descriptions is usually where you're going to find the daily commute hike. So you might find in I'm trying to think of a project off the top of my head. Ian can probably jump on one. Like, you know,
yeah, I can speak to that a little bit.
Something. Yeah.
Well, yeah, exactly what you're saying. I mean, a really easy way for volunteers to see this is to, on those maps that each description of the project has, there's a map. It'll show you where your base camp is, and then additionally it shows you the trail you're working on. Some of those trails are 5 miles long to a summit, so if your objective is clearing a 5-mile long trail, and you are able to accomplish that, then you will be doing a 10-mile round trip hike the day you complete that trail. So most often with those trail clearing projects, you will start, you might clear like a mile the first day, 2 miles to 2 miles out the second day, and so on and so forth. So your commute will get longer every day. So like Rebecca said, like, you know, Erin, if you scroll down just a little bit to those strenuousnesses, like, you know, it says work difficulty, like that work difficulty one, you know, hiking less than 3 miles to Marion Lake. So that one isn't the perfect example necessarily, but if you look under work difficulty, there, if it's a longer, more strenuous trip, you should see some description of the hike in and out of the work site, just based on the project location. So hopefully that clarifies that a little bit.
Yeah, Erin, if you look at, I don't know which one you just pulled up, but like, for instance, I know like Spruce Point or Vinegar Mountain, those might have.
I think this one kind of demonstrates the two tails that are going to be worked on here, with base camp being here. So this kind of demonstrates that this will be one work day of hiking, and this might be the other work day of hiking and commuting.
Yeah, hopefully that answers the question. That's a great question.
We have a question from Bill. If the trip offers an off day, can you speak to the rules for day hiking on the off day?
I'm happy to speak to that. We encourage volunteers to use that day for whatever they want to do, as long as it's done safely. So, for example, when I was a crew leader, when I was leading trips, the trips that I led that had a day off, Oftentimes I'd go fishing. Other volunteers would do the same. Some volunteers wanted to hike to a nearby peak, and that might have been the reason they chose that trip, is like, hey, I get a day off and I'm near Scapegoat Mountain and I want to get on top of Scapegoat. That is welcome, but we expect volunteers to be very clear with the crew leader and communicating their plan for the day, right? That's just good backcountry protocol and best practice anyways, so that there's someone who knows where you're going to be for the day, your route plan, you know, if like when you're expecting to be back, and so that line of communication is open there. But day hiking is totally allowed, or if you want to lounge around at camp all day, that is also just fine. But those days off are for you to rejuvenate in whatever way you choose to do so, as long as it's safe, as I mentioned. So hopefully that answers that.
I see Bill's follow-up question about the Sierra Club. Yeah, you know, we do partner with lots of different partners, Sierra Club, American Hiking Society. When we do those partner trips, oftentimes they're using their own liability and have their own sets of rules. And so that may very well be a Sierra Club work trip. And when we do partner with Sierra Club, we follow those rules. But on our regular, you know, general population, Gen Pop trips, we do not have that hiking limit. Most crew leaders have like a little sign out sheet. So like you would sign out that day and say like, Bill Davis, I'm going to go hike this peak. I expect to be back around 4 p.m. And then at 4 p.m., if someone doesn't show up, that's when we start looking back. Okay, where were they? Where are they when they're going to be back? That kind of thing. Of course, it's always best to hike in groups, and hopefully you can find someone to hike with you. But if you are on your own, you know, having bear spray and we've trained you on those bear protocols is highly recommended.
We have another question. Great question. Do we pack in our own food? So I can defer that to Ian or Rebecca in terms of whether or not participants pack in their own food.
No, you do not have to pack in your own food. In that registration page, there is some questions about any dietary restrictions. We also asked some very explicit questions about like how much food that you like to eat per day on a trip. Like maybe you're a big eater and like you eat as much as like what you eat in one meal, what someone would only eat half of. So there's some questions around that to help our crew leaders, number one, have food that's going to be filling and suit your dietary needs, but additionally have the adequate amount of food to make sure everyone's well fed. So you do not have to pack your own food. If you have special dietary restrictions, as long as those restrictions are reasonable, whether it's an allergy, things like that, we are happy to be accommodating of that, but we need to know all that information in advance so that we can be prepared. And we definitely are very capable of handling allergies, whether it's peanut allergies, different types of whatever kind of food allergies you might have. We have the resources to make sure we have good filling meals that meet those dietary requirements and restrictions. So
we also try to, just piggybacking off of Ian's response, but we also try to make sure that we do handle the food and not leave that with the volunteers, because it does all need to fit into bear storage. And if somebody brings a whole pound of turkey, then that's something we have to then figure out how to keep chilled and fit into our cooler that might be super full, and try to stuff granola bars into a bear hang that's already pretty heavy. Kind of makes things more difficult. But you know, if you're bringing your own snack for the hike in or what have you, you're welcome to do that as well if it's your comfort food that you need to have. But you could also communicate that with us and we can make sure to fit some of those things in as well. So next question from Wild Bill, different from the other Bill we had earlier. How many days are the average trip length?
They vary. We have National Trails Day as a single day trip where we meet at the trailhead and we work on brushing out a trail for one day. We have a number of weekend trips that are just a Saturday, Sunday, just 2 days. Our longest trip is 9 days total. That's the trip that's going into the Big Prairie area, and that's 2 days of hiking on either side with 5 days in the middle, 4 of work and 1 day off. So they vary in length. So there's a lot of options, which is awesome. We feel like that allows us to accommodate the differing needs or like scheduling requirements of volunteers. So would encourage you to look at that description page of them all, and you can see which ones are longer or shorter. They start random days of the week. So some start midweek, some start on the weekend, etc.
And we'll give it another minute or two if there are any lingering questions. I wonder if we can take this time quickly. Give me 1 second. Share. Can you all see this? No? Okay. So that did not work. Share this one. Well, the slideshow was supposed to be our contact information and where you can reach us. And we can probably all verbally say it, and I can probably type it into the chat. But if you needed to reach me for any questions about partnerships or education, you can reach out to me at Erin@bmwf.org. And if there are trips that seem like they have very specific questions, I recommend reaching out to Ian. Any invasive or weed questions, I would recommend reaching out to Zach. And if you have any Packer questions, I recommend reaching out to Rebecca there. And I would also recommend following us on Instagram, social media at Bob Marshall Wilderness. Pretty easy to find us, and we'll be touring around a bit for mountain film. So if you are in the Great Falls or Helena area, we will be there this week. The following week, we will be in Missoula, so you can stop by our table, our Bob booth, and come chat with us. And yeah, feel free to reach out if there are any direct questions or follow-ups as you begin with registration. And registration opens up and is live Monday, right? Okay. So, or if you're in the Kalispell area, you can also go and say hi to Ian, who will be at the REI. Yeah, I think with that, we'll close it out. And thank you all for joining our first ever webinar Q&A for our 2023 season. And we hope to see you all on the trail. And yeah, have a good evening. Bye. Oh, wait.
Yeah, wait 1 second. There's a question about wildfire risk.
We're gonna stay into that one.
I was just going to type something in there, but I can speak to that real quick. The question is, the snow is good this year. Do we anticipate a lower wildfire risk this summer, or a lower likelihood of wildfires? It's really hard to tell at this point. Like, the spring will be a really big determining factor of that. As some of y'all, if there's anyone on this who's a resident of the Flathead area, you might remember we got like a kind of a freak, like 3 feet of snow in the mountains in like mid-June that had a big impact on the early part of our fire season. So it's hard for us to answer that with any definitive confidence. So we're not going to speculate as to what the wildfire danger will be, as it'll depend a lot on the weather in the spring and then in the summer. But if there's wildfires that impact our trips, we are always able to find some sort of alternative, and just appreciate flexibility on that, as backcountry travel is sometimes unpredictable because of things like fire and or spring runoff, etc.
Yeah. And just to emphasize again, I mean, we are listening in to the Forest Service radio, especially during fire season. So we're aware of what is going on around us. So just something to keep in mind if you're worried about fire while you're back there. We're keeping our ears to the radio.
All right, everyone. Well, have a good night, and we'll see you on in the Bob this summer.
Thank you all.
Adios.